I'd mentioned in the previous video on molding and casting that Larry, Back to the Future Radios, had sent me a push button for an RCA 96T2, and you'll see I have a molding clay, and I'm using a Protolina molding clay. It's the softer version of that, and I've taken time to fill the cavity of the push button and just go around the outside. And I'm using my old tuning tool that I created as a sculpting tool, and then just to get the residue off the side of the push button, just using some Q-tips and wiping all of the molding clay off. My understanding from all the reading I've done, that's one of the most key things here, is just making sure that the mold itself is accurate as possible. Tried to take some extra time here and form around the push button accordingly. So let's get started here creating the silicone mold. I'm going to be using the Dragon Skin tin. It creates a really good silicone mold, and it requires no degassing. Okay, and I don't have a rolling pin out here, but next best thing, my aluminum conduit that I used to create those capacitor cans on the Zenith radio. So let me just kind of roll this out here. I think that's good. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm actually going to use a red cup, and this is what I will be actually creating the mold in, or filling up with the silicone. So I've already done some looking here, and the height and clearances that I need between the bottom and the top of the push button, it's about 2 inches down inside the cup from the top. So I filled this with water, now where the points were, and came up with a part A and B marker lines for my silicone mixture. And I'm going to cut the bottom of the cup out. This will be my molding container here. What I'm going to do is just push this down into the clay itself, and then just fold the clay back over the edges just to keep the silicone contained to the inner part of the cup. Before we do that, let me go ahead and center my push button, and I'm going to just tighten it down here so it doesn't float away on us. And you can see here I'm just putting the final touches here on getting the Protolina molding clay around the base of the cup. I also placed 2 nuts down inside the mold itself for keys. Alright, I've already put a misty coat of the Ease Release 200 here on the push button prior to placing it inside the mold cavity, but I'm going to go ahead and hit it again here with another misty coat. I think I had mentioned in the previous video they said to wait 5 minutes before applying the silicone material. Again, Smooth On recommends 30 minutes, so that's what we'll do. 30 minutes has passed, so let me go ahead and get parts A, part B mixed up here. I'll get everything in the 2 containers and blended together, and we'll pour it into the big red Solo cup. Just stir this up for 3 minutes, and then we'll pour it in here. And what I'm going to do is just aim for the lowest spot over here, which would be on this back corner. Okay, now it's just that waiting game I talked about, 75 minutes, and I'm going to give it longer than that, but you can see everything's mixed up. And again, I did add just a little more than my original measurements, probably just some of the residue off the side of the container I couldn't get out. And I've noticed that throughout on the big pourings, especially with the silicone being so thick, I probably need to mix extra up because it looks like there's always just a bit of waste. Okay, I had a few other things to do, so it worked out great. I'll let this thing cure now for about 30 minutes longer than the called out 75 minutes. So let's demold this and check out the silicone mold. The other beauty about using the Protolina, it's reusable. So this will not go to waste. I'll actually just package it back up and we'll put it back to use. So let me dig the rest of this out right here and see if we can get the original push button out of the molded area here. The fun and tedious part here. Here's a closer look now at that negative mold that we just created here using the push button for the RCA 96T2. So again, you can look, I had that whole cavity stuff full there of the molding clay. I've sprayed the mold here with some Ease Release 200, and I'm going to let that continue to dry for about 30 minutes or so. And then we'll press this back down inside this mold, and then we'll pour our second layer of silicone. Okay, I just want to make sure that this snaps in place well. So I think we have it there, but let me just double check it up close here, just to make sure that it's all the way down in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and spray the underneath side here as well with some mold release. And just hit this top side one more time, just to make sure when I pour my second layer of silicone we don't have any adherence between the two silicone layers. Okay, everything's seated well, and I've got some really good heavy coats there of the mold. Again, I don't have a liquid form, and I think that's what's recommended, so I went really heavy here, and then took a brush and brushed in a few spots as well. You can see I used the molding clay to seal around the existing silicone as well as the plastic itself. And I'll probably come up to about right here or so. Let this cure. We'll come back and check here in about an hour and a half. See what kind of results we've got. It's been an hour and a half now, and this feels nice and firm, so we're well past the 75-minute cure time. So I think we should be okay. So let's go ahead and demold this. Now let's see if this comes apart. Okay, great. It came apart just fine, and it looks nice and clean inside there. And the original push button from Larry. So I've got a lot of mold release on here already, so I'm kind of curious and eager to go ahead and cast a push button. Let me go ahead and make up a batch of resin. In this case, I'm going to be using a 300 Part A and Part B. And I'm going to stir this up for 1 minute. I'm going to go ahead and grab my Part A. Okay, I'm going to stir this for 1 minute and then put it in the mold. let that sit there for about 10 minutes or so, and we'll check and see what kind of results we get. Okay, let's see what we've got here. And a little flashing here, which I expected to see. There we have it, our first casting.